Good afternoon. Welcome to the May 11, 2017 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Today's meeting is being broadcast live by Winston-Salem TV Digital Media. It will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning, again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today is the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner has requested withdrawal or continuance, or items for which the staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For our public hearings today, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There is no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one will be permitted to speak unless a board member asks a question. For general use district zoning, the board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district. Therefore, the petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district request, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of our agenda require final action by either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken here today are recommendations that go to those bodies for their consideration. If you're addressing the board today, before you begin your remarks, please give us your name, address, including zip code for the record. First item of business is approval of the minutes of the April 13, 24, and 27 meetings. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Or
Move approval. Second.
motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now call on Aaron King to present our consent agenda.
All right. First item is B2. It's zoning docket W3327. And this is a request for RMUS zoning on about 1.7 acres on the west side of Peters Creek Parkway, south of Business 40. You may remember this was continued at your last meeting. The applicant has submitted a request for another 1-month continuance. They got it in by the automatic deadline, so this item is automatically continued to June, and it will have to be heard there. That's their last continuance. Next item is B3. It's zoning docket W3328, and this is a request to rezone about 0.4 acres from limited office to limited business, limited use zoning. And you can see the site there on the west side of Renolda Road, north of Valley Road, and at Yadkinville Road, just a little bit out of this image to the north or to the top of the image. You can see a little pocket of commercial zoning there on the west side of Renolda Road. It's composed of limited office and limited business zoning. Staff has reviewed this. We believe it's consistent with area plan recommendation of office and limited commercial use. We believe it's consistent with previous rezonings that have been improved in this area. I think all three of those LBS and LBO rezonings have been done in the past 10 years. They've all gone from LO. So staff is supportive of this due to it being consistent with the area plan and consistent with previous rezonings in this area, and we would recommend approval.
Okay. Anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Leek. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say that there's a trend of rezoning here to, I think, what is the limit of intensity that is acceptable to the area plan. So I just wanted to make the point that while I support this, I just think that this is about as far as we can go with this level of intensity here.
Any other comments? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is B6. It's zoning docket F1566, and this is a request to rezone about 3/4 of an acre from limited business to general business limited use. And you can see the site there in yellow. It's on the west side of Broad Street, south of Summit Street, and in the town limits of Rural Hall. Again, you can see the zoning pattern of limited business in that general area and then surrounded by residential zoning. This general business limited use request has got quite a few restrictions on it. I believe the uses they have restricted this to are outdoor display retail, which is car sales, services A, retail store, and offices. So they've severely restricted the uses on this property. They've also agreed to a condition that basically retains the westernmost half, essentially, of that property, which is wooded. for it to remain undisturbed so that there's no impacts going further west into that residential area. They've also agreed to conditions that deal with signage, with installation of street yards, and lighting. We did send this out to the town of Rural Hall for their comments, and they are supportive of this request, provided those comments, those conditions that I just mentioned to you were accepted, and the petitioner is agreeable to all of those. The area plan does call for office or low-intensity commercial for this site. GB is probably a little bit on the high-intensity scale for that. However, given the extensive amount of conditions that are placed on this property, staff is supportive of this request, and we would recommend approval.
Anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Is there no one, declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
The next item is B7, it's UDO 277, and this is a text amendment dealing with the H and HO regulations. We briefed this item to you at your work session, and I'm going to turn it over to David Reed for a quick summary of that.
Okay, this is an amendment to Article 4, which is the historic regulations. Most of the items in there are handled by the HRC. It came about while we were working on updating the architectural survey for the county. Invited the small towns to be involved in that update, and they all wanted to participate in it. But in order to get CLG grants, which means Certified Local Government Grants, each of those towns has to be a CLG. So the state recommended they be included in the county under the county CLG, and cases be heard in those towns by the HRC. So the changes we're proposing to Article 4. Article 4-1 would add the towns of Bethania, Louisville, Rural Hall, and Walkertown to the county CLG, to the HRC. And Article 2 would be changed just to change the purpose statement. The language in there now is dated. This would make it consistent with the current state enabling legislation. And Article 4-3 is proposed to change and update the makeup of the membership so those small towns will eventually have representation as attrition happens on the HRC. So we would recommend approval of these changes to Chapter B, Article 4 of the UDO.
Thank you, Dave. No one has signed up. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Is there no one, declare the public hearing closed. What's the wishes of the board?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second Ms. Smith. Any discussion?
I just had a question for you, David. Have you had any dialogue with the local historic organizations, like the local historic of the cities and towns? Some of them have their own historic societies, and also the Preserve Historic Forsyth, those kinds of groups.
Well, the towns that do have strong historic societies, we're expecting that membership would probably come out of those. We haven't had direct discussion with them about that, but I imagine through the survey process, they will probably get more involved.
But I'll just add that our staff has had discussions with each of the towns, and they are very enthusiastic about this and in support of it.
Okay. Any other comments? We have a motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
The next item is C1, zoning docket W3330, and this is it's a special use permit for a transmission tower in RS9 zoning. And you may remember a while ago we did a text amendment that dealt with transmission towers. And at the planning board level here today, this is a planning board review for the board, and then it will go on to the city council as an elected body special use permit and a quasi-judicial hearing that will take place there. So to get you oriented with this request, this is about 19.4 acres located on the south side of Jasper Lane, east of Old Salisbury Road, and Peters Creek Parkway is just out of this image to the east. So it's obviously in the southern portion of the city. And you can see the subject property there in yellow. Existing, if you can follow the mouse, there's an existing single-family home located here, and then two accessory structures. They look like barns located in this area. The proposed tower would go to the rear of this westernmost structure, if you can see where the mouse is located. So this is the site plan that's been submitted with this request. This is for a 125-foot tall stealth or flagpole tower that you can see there on the right. So all of the Co-locations and all the equipment are located internal to the tower. No additional equipment on the exterior of the tower. As I mentioned to you earlier, there were two kind of barn structures. This is one, and this is the westernmost one that I referenced earlier. And the proposed tower will be located to the rear of that building. In evaluating this request, there are two setbacks. There's a 100-foot setback from any adjacent zoning lot, and they do meet that. You can see the red line there. And the zoning lot is here, so they clearly meet that. And then there's another setback that's required that's basically tower height plus an additional 20 feet that has to be met from any occupied residential structure. So you can see that blue circle that denotes that. And again, these are barns. These are not houses here. So there's no houses, no occupied houses within that 145-foot setback. In addition, there are some requirements in the transmission tower use conditions that deal with photo simulations. You have those in your agenda, in your packets that were mailed to you. And there's also a requirement that the applicant reach out to the adjoining property owners prior to the elected body hearing. In this case, the applicant has already done that. I believe they did that in late February, so they've addressed that concern. Staff has reviewed this. We believe it complies with UDO requirements, and we would recommend approval of this request.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a question, Aaron. Was there also a requirement to preserve vegetation in like the fall zone of, I thought there was some kind of vegetation preservation provision.
I don't have an image in this one. If you give me 1 second. There's really not a lot there in that area. Again, the tower's going there, so there's not really any vegetation back there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, what I was thinking is that if there were trees there, and when we drove by the site, I couldn't tell how close the trees were.
Sure.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to make the point that the photo simulations I thought were very well done, and with the balloon way of visualizing the tower height, I thought that was very effective.
Thank you. Any other comments? Motion for approval. Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Next item is D1. This is a planning board review for a life care community in RM18 zoning. And you can see the subject, 3 acres there shown in yellow. This is for Salem Town. To get you oriented, Indiana Avenue kind of is to the south here, and then University Parkway is to the east. And of course, Salem Town's main campus is here on this RM18S zone property that's a little further west than what we're looking at. You may remember this site was originally rezoned RM18 several years ago, and then I believe in 2015, Salem Town folks came in for a planning board review for the Phase 1 portion of this RM18 piece that was kind of here at the southern edge along along Indiana Avenue. And this is a site plan that was submitted with this request, so you can see Phase 1 down here, which was a skilled care facility. And then what we're looking at today is the 3 acres kind of circled in red here. What you see there are 2 4-story apartment buildings for senior apartment buildings for a total of 56 units. Staff has reviewed this. We believe it meets UDO requirements, and we would recommend approval of this request.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Younger. Any comments, discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, there's the elevations. Hope you weren't counting on those for your approval.
Counted.
Item D2, this is Planning Board Review 2001-03, and this is for a child daycare center in RM12 zoning. You can see it there at the northwest corner of 5th Street and Cleveland Avenue. And this is the site plan that was submitted with this request. So there's an existing building that's kind of located in the middle of the property, parking out front, and 2 access points onto Cleveland Avenue. That remains kind of unchanged. What they're here for today is about a 6,600 square foot addition on the back portion of that building, the westernmost portion of the site, and then about 20 additional parking spaces shown here in the southeast corner. They have provided their fenced-in play area, which is a requirement, and they do meet minimum UDO requirements. So staff would recommend approval of this PBR request.
Move approval. Second.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Gary Roberts will present the staff report on the first case.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, next item on the agenda is the public hearing for case W3322. Petitioner is CCC Gallery Lofts, LLC, and CCC Gallery Lofts 2, LLC. The site is 2.05 acres located on the west side of Chestnut Street between 5th Street and 7th Street. And the request is a special use limited rezoning from PBS and PB to Central Industrial Special Use Limited. Legacy's growth management plan, it's located within the growth management area 2, Center City growth management area. And this is the subject property, the zoning map showing the site. You may remember that this came up at your March meeting. That was discussed fairly extensively. You did recommend approval. At that time, it was a general use case for central and industrial, but there was some discussion from the public about traffic congestion, particularly on 7th Street, and parking. That went to the City Council in April, and so they have remanded it back to you for further consideration of a different request. It's now been converted to a special use limited request. And really the difference is now that the petitioners have agreed to a condition to where they would meet the PB parking district standards. The CI district has no parking requirements. Just to look at the site again, if this is your first time in context, this is kind of a transitional area of commercial zoning, PB zoning. It does have a lot of housing in it, though, but it's located between the central business area, located to the west of downtown, and the central industrial area, which is located further to the east. So there's, again, a lot of apartments, a lot of lofts that have been created and adaptive reused in this area. It's located right along the railroad track. The southern portion is used as a park, and the northern portion, which is zone PB and PBS, is the Gallery Lofts apartments. This is an aerial photograph showing the subject property. And it's within the downtown area plan, which was adopted in 2013, which recommends purple, which is mixed use for this entire area. So the request with CI, which does allow for a mixture of uses, is consistent with that. And it's also consistent with Legacy in regard to downtown development, CI district. This is looking north there along Chestnut. This is the park I mentioned earlier, Gallery Lofts apartment building. This is a National Register building. This is looking from 7th Street south. The site is to the right, and the Golder Manor apartments are to the left. Subject property there. Again, there at the intersection of 6th and Chestnut. This property is being developed now, and there is a parking deck which will be wrapped with a multifamily, and that parking deck also will have some degree of public parking. This is from 7th Street looking into the site, looking southwest. You have the Winston loft apartments over here to the right. It's looking west on 7th Street, and the art-based school is to the right here at 7th Street. This is a broader map showing in blue the CB zoning area. Of course, the yellow is the subject property, and pink is CI zoning. So it's really, again, in a transitional area where CI zoning we feel like is consistent with the adopted plans and the surrounding development pattern. CI zoning with special use limited is consistent with the recommendations of the downtown plan and Legacy 2030, as I mentioned. The site is in a pedestrian-oriented area which is well served by transit and sidewalks. The site is adjacent to other properties which are zoned CI and within an area located between CB, Winston Overlay, and CI zoning. And the proposed CIL zoning will allow for more development flexibility on the subject property than is permitted by the existing mixture of zonings. And most importantly, on this request, it now includes a condition to provide parking equivalent to the requirements of the PB district. So it depends upon the use which they actually propose will dictate the amount of parking that's required. but the PB district in general does give a 30% parking reduction, similar to the GB district. So whatever use they want to do, the parking spaces will be calculated upon that, and then there's a 30% reduction given to the within the PB district. So staff's recommendation is for approval, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions of staff at this time? Okay. This is a public hearing. Signed proponent is Luke Dickey.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates. Address is 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. It's good to be in front of you again this afternoon to discuss this project. I know we had lots of discussions previously in regards to the parking scenario, the traffic congestion, when it was just a general use. We really couldn't get into the specifics of that. And that we went to, of course, was mentioned with arts-based schools here. Michael Suggs with Goler Community Development also had expressed some concerns, and then some residents of the development had expressed concerns as well. So we're going to say we had listened to those concerns and had requested that it be remanded back to Planning Board to go to this new CIL zoning. Primary concerns during that discussion was focused on parking, and that CI does not have any parking requirements. So we've placed in now this one a condition for the PB parking requirements. And so that, hopefully that will address those concerns and that questions of those. We did have a meeting with the arts-based school and also with Goler Community Development prior to the City Council meeting. Kind of shared with them what was the idea of what we were trying to do on this site. They were fully supportive of that plan, as long as we added that condition for the PB zoning. Also, we also had limited some conditions, the uses also in that to remove. So I think manufacturing was one of those uses that was allowed in the CI zoning, as we had struck that from this request as well. But the overall goal is, we have concerns about, probably mentions from neighbors about how they really haven't been contacted about what was taking place with this. I've got a notification letter that was sent from the ownership group. I'd like to pass that out. This letter is basically what the overall goal is talking about is kind of the expansion possibilities for gallery lofts. It is a residential development that's existing there now with roughly 82 units, a mixture of one-bedroom and two-bedroom units. But 82 units is kind of hard to maintain in this day and age from a marketability standpoint. So what their goal is to add is about another 40 to 50 units for more like studio apartments. Also adding additional amenities such as a saltwater pool and a grilling area in there as they're trying to develop these plans out. So they don't have a specific site plan at this point because that costs a lot of money to develop, but this is kind of their intent, is kind of get the zoning in place and flexibility for the type of development that they want to do in this area. The overall goal after adding this 40 to 50 units and also the amenities to make it more in line with the marketplace, with who they're competing with. As you know, the new Grubbs development is coming in, as well as a lot of other residential units here in this area. But overall, we understand that there is a concern about the existing amount of parking provided for the gallery lofts is light on parking. So with this proposed new development, the intent is to add a higher ratio of parking to the development above and beyond what they have currently, even with the new addition of 40 to 50 units. So that is basically our request at this point, is with those conditions to move forward to help move this expansion of the gallery lofts forward into the future. I appreciate your time, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah,
Yes.
Luke, I had a question. This letter that you handed out to us, was this given to the residents?
Is my understanding, yes, that this notification was given to the residents.
Okay, and it's basically just notifying them of your plans, so it's not a meeting per se, right?
That is correct, yes.
Did you have a meeting where the neighbors were invited?
Neighbors, in terms of the property owners around the site,
I'm really
yes.
talking about
but the residents of the actual...
residents of the apartments.
No, we had tried to work with the development group to do that, and they chose to send out this letter instead.
Okay, all right.
Any other questions of Luke at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in support of this? If not, then we'll turn to the opposition. Dan Knight.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's great to be here this afternoon. I'm happy to see you again. My name is Dan Knight. My wife Julie and I live at 181 East 6th Street, apartment 401, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. So I'm also here representing some of the tenants of the gallery lofts. Those people are Byron Williams, Presley Griffiths, Janet Claxton, who is present, James and Melanie Taylor, Chris and Meredith Batters, Jackie Flynn, Christopher Woolard, who sent you an email. I believe you may have received that this afternoon. Julia and Santiago de la Parra, and Christopher Presby. We are not just residents of the gallery lofts. Together we are a postal clerk, a construction worker, a retired librarian, 2 local attorneys, 2 grade school teachers, an architect whose work is recognized nationally, 1 retired diabetes educator, 1 highly respected dog trainer, 2 esteemed faculty members of Wake Forest University, 1 faculty member of Winston-Salem State, 1 nationally known columnist and broadcaster, Brother Byron Williams, 1 Steinway artist, pianist, and composer whose music was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in Music, 1 chemical engineer who is lead engineer at a regional textile plant, 1 mechanical engineer who works for a major automotive company, 1 automotive engineer whose engines placed first and second this year in the 24 hours of Daytona, 2 Wake Forest University law students, 2 nationally known published authors, 1 who just did a biography on Martin Luther King, 3 physicians, 1 senior pathologist, 1 oncologist who is also a faculty member at Bowman Gray College of Medicine, 1 surgeon whose specialty is women's reproductive health, 2 law students at Wake Forest University, 1 Wake Forest University law professor, 2 students in a Wake Forest Physician's Assistance Program, 3 Wake Forest medical students, 4 senior arts administrators whose work is local, national, and international in scope. So we represent the community that you sought to build. We are what you, through the Goler folks who started this whole process, envisioned for this community. We are black and white. We are male and female. We're gay and straight. We're citizens of this country and newly come immigrants. We're young and old. Some of us working, some of us retired, some of us working here in Winston-Salem, some of us working in outlying cities. We came to this city, to Winston-Salem, and this particular neighborhood from across the United States and the world. We chose this particular building, this neighborhood, because within this neighborhood, with our brothers at Goler Manor across the street, we are part of a community wherein we feel safe and respected and free to follow our individual creative paths in our own remarkable ways. We are a few of the pioneers of the diverse community which your foresight has helped to bring into being. We are living here on the shoulders of the preparation and the ideals that you have set forth in this particular neighborhood. We are here now. We are not dream millennials. We are not the folks who are going to come in and rent small little apartments, who are here for maybe 6 months or a year and who are going to go on and go somewhere else. We are people who are here who are establishing careers, who have established careers, who want to spend our lives in Winston-Salem. We want to give of our time and our devotion and our intelligence and our resources and our capabilities and our passions to you. We want to contribute to what you seek to accomplish for the betterment of this city and for the betterment of this state and for the betterment of this nation. We ask only one thing of you this afternoon. We ask that you keep that same sense of commitment to people, to neighborhood, to place at the forefront of your decisions today. We have had no notification from the development committee here. None of the neighbors, none of my neighbors, none of the people who are present here with whom I represent the Gallery Lofts have had any notification whatsoever about any of the plans related to this specific process. None. So a vote to approve the change in zoning of classification of this neighborhood from our standpoint without a site plan from the developer is a vote for blind progress. There can be no foresight in a plan that has no plan. There can be no foresight in a plan that has no plan. And if I see foresight anywhere, I see foresight in the plan that you made, that you put together, that you, as a Planning and Zoning Commission, had for this place when it first started. It was to be open and progressive and inclusive of families and inclusive of children and inclusive of minorities and people from every age and ethnic and economic distribution. We have that now. I wake up every morning to the sound of children going to the arts education school. I hear and see friends of mine now who attend Goler Church. I was walking my dog at midnight one time last summer, and I saw a friend of mine from Goler who was being followed. He was a black man, an elderly man. He was walking home from the other side of 40. I recognized him, and I saw a police officer following this gentleman. And I saw him look at me. I saw this gentleman look at me. And I held out my hand to him. I held out my hand to him because he was my brother, because this is a guy I saw every day. I knew who he was. The police didn't know him. But I reached out my hand to him and I embraced him. And he grabbed me. And he looked at me and he said, "They're watching me." And I said, "Yes, sir, I know." But I said, "We're okay. I love you." That's what we have here. We have a sense of neighborhood. We have a sense of belonging. We have a sense of place. We have a sense of purpose. And we would hate to see that destroyed by the kind of planning that would substitute that for a high-rise. You have a chance to do something really, really, really special here. This is a civic place. This is a civic. Winston-Salem has the perfect opportunity in the Wake Forest Development Center to not only to build something that is beautifully high-tech, but to build a place where folks can walk out in the morning and listen to the birds, where people can live in a green space, where people can be a part of a community and walk 2 blocks down to go to Aperture, to see foreign films, to go to the Stevens Center, but to live in a place that's not high-rise crunch. We need that here. Winston-Salem can be what Leeds was in England. The Leeds folks had to reclaim their green space. They had to rebuild it because it was taken away from them. They had to tear buildings down to make green space. You do not have that here. You have that opportunity to continue to do something special and unique. So what we are asking today, those of us who live and work and share our lives in this neighborhood, we want and need the opportunity to contribute to its growth and to shape its future. Our presence here demonstrates our commitment to this place and to what you envision. There can only be a shared vision of community if all members of the community are included in that vision. And that has not been the case. That has simply not been the case here. We have been excluded from day one. The owners of the property have been contacted, but the residents, the people who actually live in this building, have not heard word one, not one single word. We've heard about as much as you have heard about the site plan. Nothing. Not one single word. So we urge you to withhold a change in zoning until such time as the proposed developer demonstrates a need for this change in zoning by submitting a site plan, a simple site plan, for public review and fully shares their vision for our neighborhood with us. If they want to put a high-rise in that spot, let them show us what they want to put. Let us have a discussion about what is proper and what fits the unique characteristics of Winston-Salem. What fits the unique characteristics of this particular neighborhood? Let them show us. It's that simple. If they want to make an investment in this city, let them spend the few dollars it will spend to actually put a real site plan together and make a real presentation to you. That way, you can consider it, and we as neighbors can consider it. It might be something that we might include. It might be something that we can embrace, but if we don't know what it is, we can't make a judgment on it. So we urge you to withhold your change in zoning until such time as the proposed developer demonstrates a need for this change. Thank you for your consideration. And thank you for what you've done to make this place a place where we want to come and live.
Thank you, sir. How much time we have left?
1 minute, 20 seconds.
Will not.
I try to be fast. It's hard to follow Mr. Knight after that. Will not. I live at 424 Springdale Avenue, Winston-Salem, 27104. My concern is about safety. There is a school right there with 500 students. There's also a daycare. I don't know the number of children. Couple of quick things. First of all, the copy of the plan of the map, the zoning map, I guess, that came with the minutes. It's an antique. It shows buildings that have been demolished over a decade ago. It doesn't show new buildings. It doesn't show that it shows, apologize, that Liberty Street ties into Martin Luther King. It does not, because that's one of the locations that parents stop and get out, cross 5 lanes of traffic to pick up their children. Sometimes these parents are carrying small kids, sometimes they're even pushing a stroller, but they have to cross 5 lanes of traffic. The other part of this issue is that the parking along 7th Street. Connie James testified at the last meeting that there was adequate parking for the CI. Well, presently there is no parking allowed along 7th Street. 7th Street is used by the school parents as they line up to both drop off and pick up in the afternoons. The traffic is going both ways as the parents circulate through. Other parents are trying to walk across that 7th Street. Traffic is, because of the street is so narrow, the cars parked in line that are queued to go through take up the space, and there's two-way traffic trying to use a single lane. My issue is safety, and I agree that a site plan needs to be issued so that the safety of children and adults can be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for the extra time.
That's all the time. Okay. Well, no one else has signed up, so I'll declare the public hearing closed. Go into work session.
I had a question.
Yes.
Is Ms. James here?
No.
Okay, maybe one of the staff can answer this. The issue about the parking on 7th Street. If the parking is, right now, there are no parking signs on 7th Street in this block. In fact, you showed pictures of cars that were improperly parked on the sidewalk, but apparently there is no parking allowed. My question is really, could there be a change to allow parking, or would that be unlikely?
I don't know the answer to your question. I'm just going back to this image so we can take a better look. Is that it?
That's 7th Street, and the
Okay.
other one was 7th Street.
I don't think parking's prohibited on 7th Street.
So that is incorrect, that it's not prohibited.
I don't see any signs posted. I mean, I'm not aware.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps the residents could answer that question better than us since they live there, but I'm not aware that parking is
Okay,
prohibited.
there's someone in the back who may.
You need to come to the microphone, please.
My name is Julie Knight, and I live in the Gallery Lofts. And I walk every day. I walk dogs in our apartment building, and I walk along 7th every single day. And the only parking that is available to the people that go to the school is in the school property. There's no parking along 7th, and there's no place for parking. If you were to park your car along the side, you would be stopping traffic. And it does happen at that time of day when students are entering or exiting the building, and it's a traffic jam, literally. I walk the other direction to avoid it because I feel like I'm not only risking my life, but those children are risking their lives that have to cross the street if people should have parked on 7th or on Chestnut. It's a very dangerous situation at those times. And I witness it every single day, Monday through Friday. And it has great impact on the flow of traffic. And that's one of my major concerns is that flow of traffic. It should that more apartments go in there because those children are already at risk.
Thank you. That was my question. Really was, and that's why I'm sorry that Ms. James isn't here because what I wanted to know is if there is no parking
There
because
is a sign that says no parking allowed.
that was my question. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Oh, sorry. My name is Dan Knight again. The only thing I have to add is actually you can see two cones. There are two orange cones there, one on one side of the street and one on the other. Those are the cones that are put out by the school every day to make sure that nobody parks along that particular stretch of road. It's to reinforce the no parking sign that exists on the street. So folks come out every day and make sure that absolutely nobody parks there. And between the arts-based school and Mud Pies, which is just down from that, where they have drop-offs every day for daycare and pickups every afternoon, it's just a madhouse. And the potential for accident with the railway and the railway crossing there is extraordinary. So yes, so in the absence of signs in that particular space, that's why those cones are there in the book.
Before you sit down, I have a question for you, Mr. Knight.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for what you shared, too. If you did see a site plan, what would you be open to? What type of development would you be open to, or are you opposed to all development?
I'm not opposed to development because if you're a developer and you have a particular piece of property, you want to see it used to the best maximum profit. That's what developers do. What I would like to see is something that included neighborhood, something that did not impact greatly on the feeling of space. I spoke with the folks at Goler AME Church a lot about the issues that they have related to dogs on their property, to trash in the area, to the increase in density of population, and they have felt bombarded by what's going on around them. I mean, to the point now where the church is actually considering putting a fence around the green space that they have there. So what I would see, what I would like to see is something that was inclusive of the space, something that contributed to the feeling of neighborhood and community. I don't know what that would look like.
Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Dickey and Mr. Stemmel. They talk about 50 units. I mean, we don't have a site plan, but given the size, and there was concerns about a skyscraper and that sort of thing, what do you have an idea what scale building would be proposed?
Sure. Doug Stemmel, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200. I'm the president of Stimmel Associates. We're landscape architects, land planners, and civil engineers, and we're representing the existing client that's proposing to develop 40 to 50 new units. To put it in perspective, there's 1 acre there, so by the time you meet parking requirements of the PB district, you're very limited in what size building you can even fit on 1 acre and meet parking requirements. What I would like to do is we respect everything that Mr. Knight has said. What he said, we respect that. We're trying to create something better for the community. Downtown has asked for an increase in multifamily units for the last 20 years. 82 units is not feasible to manage to compete with the next 400-unit project on the next corner that's going in. They have to be able to have more units, so that's why they want to add 40 to 50 new units. As far as notifications, I want to make it very clear. We met with Mr. Suggs after the last planning board meeting. They fully support his concern with parking. Parking and traffic is created by a challenge from the arts-based school that brings in 500 parents a day in and out of that street. This site will not create that problem with 40 to 50 apartment units. Now, in terms of notices to the neighborhood, if I were responsible for notifying Mr. Knight, which we were not, the current owner said that they would touch base with all of them. So I can't speak to why you weren't notified. All of the residents around that were notified. The existing owner was to touch base with them and told us that he sent that to them. I understand they want to see a representation of what goes on. I'm willing, the owner is not here, but to ask for a continuance and request that the owner meet with them to show any preliminary plans that he has. What they're trying to do, the owner is trying to do, is before he spends hundreds of thousands of dollars moving forward with plans, he wants to try to get his zoning approved and what's recommended in all of your area plans for this site, which is multifamily. And it's recommended, and we thought we limited it to what PB limits those uses. That's what we asked for in this zoning. We limited the parking. We thought we addressed the concerns with the school and everybody else. The owner was to contact them, and whether I have the right or not, I'm asking for a continuance.
No, you don't. Are you agreeable to continuance?
We are.
Okay, would someone care to move a continuance for a month?
I would make that motion.
Okay.
A second.
Motion by Ms. Dunnigan, second Mr. Leek to continue 1 month, give you an opportunity to meet with the residents. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. See you next month. Okay. All right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, next item on your agenda is zoning docket W3329. Petitioners Michael Trollinger, Albert Brown, and Isaiah Davis. And the site is 1.46 acres located on the northwest corner of Culver School Road and Lansing Drive. And the request is a special use limited request from RS9 to LBL, Limited Business Special Use Limited. And these are the uses that are being requested. Include church, motor vehicle rental and leasing, offices, daycare center, car wash, retail store, convenience store, and a few other uses. This is Legacy's Growth Management Plan. It's located within the yellow Suburban Neighborhoods Growth Management Area 3. And this is a zoning map showing the subject property there highlighted in yellow. Again, it's 1.46 acres in size, and it's on the corner of two minor thoroughfares, Lansing and Culver School Road. The site is currently undeveloped. It's heavily wooded. To the west and north and east are other RS9 zone properties developed with single-family homes. Across the street, across Lansing and catty corner across Culver School Road is IP zoning. You have the Woodruff Center there with the Forsyth Tech community building, and also the Culver School Road branch library. And then the Culver School Road Church of Christ is southwest southeast, of the site. This is an aerial photograph showing the subject property and development pattern. And this is the Northeast Suburban Area Plan. This is a 2011 plan, which recommends no change. It recommends that it remain single-family residential. That's the yellow. The blue would be institutional use. And then there is a change in this plan and the draft plan, which is going to be heard by you later today, along Motor Road. Since this time, the 2011 plan was developed, Motor Road has connected to New Walkertown Road. And so the purple is an area recommended for mixed use where retail and service type uses could be developed consistent with the plan across the railroad track. These images are taken on site. This is pulling out of the Woodruff Center there, looking onto Lansing. The subject property there is across the street. This is looking into the subject property. Actually, this house is not on the site. The property line is right about here. And this is the entrance to the library and the Forsyth Tech. This is looking west on Lansing Drive and looking into Forsyth Tech and the library. And you can see the quality of the building materials, the brick, pitched roof, a lot of investment in these public facilities there as far as the building appearance and architecture. This is looking east on Lansing at the intersection there of Culver School. The site is to the left. A little bit further, closer to that intersection there, you have Culver School Road and Culver School Road Church of Christ located in the background again. Good building materials and a lot of detail in that structure there. This is the intersection of Culver School and Lansing. The site is just off the image to the left. There's the site to the left. This is looking up Culver School Road towards the railroad track. And one of staff's concern is the access to this site and the curvature of this road here and somewhat of a blind access as far as visibility goes. The site is located positively at the intersection of two minor thoroughfares, and also the request could introduce some commercial uses that may end up providing food and groceries to this portion of town, which is certainly a plus. But the request is not consistent with the low-density residential land use recommendation of both the existing and the draft Northeast Suburban Area Plan update. And some of the proposed uses, particularly convenience store and car wash, could have some negative visual and noise impacts on some of the adjacent properties. And you did get an email in your packet from one of the property owners that was in opposition to this request. And also Legacy 2030 promotes quality design. However, without a site plan, staff really and the community has no assurances that the appearance issues such as building placement and building materials will be addressed adequately. The Culver School Road frontage is located on the inside of a curve both horizontally and vertically with potentially limited sight distance. So staff's recommendation is for denial, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff?
Yes, I've got a question. If you have a site that you can't readily see that's got all the parameters you look for, like access, that kind of thing, if something were approved, then someone could end up with a piece of property that would there, what would be the next step to catch those issues? Would it just end up being an undevelopable site regardless of the rezoning with it?
Well,
or how would that happen?
No, they would submit construction plans to the inspections division, and that would include application for a driveway permit. I spoke earlier this week with Al Gaskell, who's in the audience, and he felt like probably the best access, maybe not ideal, but the best access to this site would be from Lansing. But that would be determined when they submitted their construction plans to the inspections department. So we're certainly not saying that the site is not developable. Okay. It has certainly development potential.
Any property has the right to get access, so they would have to give a driveway permit, but they would be looking at where is the best place to put it.
Okay.
Yes.
I had a question also, Gary. Given the low-density residential all around it, if this were rezoned, would it be considered a spot zone?
We did not feel that was the case because you've got IP zoning across the street.
Gary, can you go back to the location map?
Yes.
There's a lot of LI, LIS, GBS just across Old Walkertown from this site, so I think given that, it would not be considered an illegal spot zone.
Right.
And for another question, let's go ahead and have the public
You have
hearing
one more
for you.
question.
Okay, sorry.
So the residential area to the, let's say, left of the subject property, how long have those homes been there? Or actually on either side of the property? I guess I'm wondering how long the subject property has been just a wooded, vacant area.
It's my understanding the petitioners own it for 20-plus years.
And the homes around it have been
I would
probably
imagine so,
several
just
decades.
by looking at them.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll have the public hearing. Major Sanders?
Mr. Trollinger has secured my services to do a site plan. We have generated...
Excuse me, sir. Please give us your name and address for the record before you begin.
Major Sanders, I'm an architect. Office is in Greensboro, North Carolina.
What's your address?
We had
We need your address, please, sir.
200 Murray Street.
Okay.
Mr. Trollinger unfortunately did not submit a preliminary sketch plan that was done actually about a year ago. And at that time, we had indicated the facilities that were going to be located on that site. At that time, it was just one building. Additional investigation and additional work has allowed us to do two things that weren't prevalent at the initial sketch plan. One, we were able to get an actual site plan showing the buildings and the driveways and the property that's currently available for development. The other thing we were able to do was get some indication of a client that wanted to supply a multi-purpose facility. In the overall design concept at this time, there is no car wash being entertained. The only two items that are being entertained at this point in time is one, a multi-purpose store, some additional space that could be used either for office area or a small shop, and the last entity being one of a proposed drive-through facility. In looking at the overall boundary of that particular area, there are no what I call community-type convenience stores available for any of the residents. The closest type of service for any type of shop is approximately 1 mile from that particular site. In terms of being able to offer some additional jobs, particularly for one client that looks at operating 24 hours a day, would also have an economic impact on the residents. In our initial design that was applied, and we did go through a sketch plan with the city of Winston-Salem, at the property line that abuts the residential section, we provided a buffer zone, Leland Cypress, and anybody knows anything about Leland Cypress, I can assure you that you would not be able to see any type of commercial services. Again, to reiterate, we've advanced to the point where one, we do have a survey. Two, we are able to show the necessary parking. And three, none of the areas of a car wash or anything that I would consider to be disadvantaged for that particular area is currently being entertained. As I said earlier, there's a multi-purpose store that would be able to supply, as I was a little boy, bread when my mother wanted bread rather than going to the superstore. And again, it would also be able to supply some means for employment due to the fact that the major client are currently looking at having operations that would be advantageous for individuals to do off-service types of operations. So, in view of what the city reviewed, we had a review in terms of sight lines, assessment, traffic. None of those were negative. I don't know why we're questioning of a car wash or anything that's disadvantageous to the facility. In terms of material, it was what I would call a very simple, straightforward type of facility. we weren't entertaining what you may consider to be a disadvantage area because of the site itself. The traffic and sight lines were not mentioned in any of the reviews that were done on our initial site plan. I was under the impression that that site plan, the initial sketch plan, was still in possession of the planning department, since we do have a 2-page analysis of things that were accepted and things that they wanted to see in terms of an engineering plan. There were no adverse remarks based on that initial sketch plan. What?
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Members of the board, my name is Thomas Trollinger, and I'm the spokesman for the petitioners. This
please
land
give us your address, please, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
3620 Willow Ridge Lane, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27105. And my residence is in the middle of the northeast ward. I have a handout I want to give each of you so you can follow me as I make my comments. First of all, this area has only grown 1.8% from 2000 to 2014. The average age of the residents, 49% are 65 or older. One of the things about this, if you look at the first page, that's the list of developments I have done in this area for the last 20 years. I tell people I've done more than anybody else, but that's not saying much when you've only grown 1.8%. Ernie Pitt and I are responsible for having the library and Forsyth Tech on that site, as well as the 23 houses adjacent to it. We went to Maisie Woodruff. Some of you who've been here a long time know Maisie. And we also went to Gary Green and Jerry Long. And that's how that site showed up there. When it was constructed, it was the only library branch and Forsyth Tech branch in a black community in this whole state. Across the street is the Culver Road Christian Church. And then there are also the rental houses that you see across the street they've been there forever. Now, according to the planning board, there are almost 10,000 cars a day that pass that site. Now, how many of you want to live in a house where you got 10,000 cars a day passing? Projected to be 23,000 cars by the year 2035. So you see some of the things I've done. On that second page, I went back in the archives, and if you look under A, as of 1991, this whole area was designated for development of institutional offices and high-density housing. When did that change? Gary, can you tell me?
I'm sorry.
I went back and got the area study plan from 1991.
Yes.
And that shows Area A designated as area for development, institutional office, and high-density housing. So as of 1991, this area was designated for institutional office and residential, not residential, but commercial.
That's correct. The 1991 Carver School Road Area Plan did recommend multifamily and actually office on this property. The 2011 plan recommended single-family residential. If there was a plan in between that period, I'm not sure where it actually transitioned.
Okay. But my contention is the community has a need for commercial. There is no residential establishments there for residents. They have to go out of the community. And this is just one site. Now, as far as the site lines, if we undercut the site and bring it down to street level and cut the trees down, I don't think that would be a problem as far as the site line. You'll be able to see coming around the corner. Okay. The next thing, I have given you a map with red dots on it, and that map simply shows the like of services in that whole area. Everything in white is the area, but the red dots that carry out from Highway 158 all the way over to 66. It's a food desert, and it's a desert. Okay, I live there. I've been there since 1974. And then the next thing, I did have a community meeting on April the 7th. I passed out over 80 flyers to everybody in the community, and 5 people showed up. And this shows the thing that they would like to see. This survey said, what would you like to see built on the site? And this is what was written down by the people that attended the meeting. The final pages are petitions from people that live in the neighborhood who support the project. And I would urge your consideration, based on the lack of development in the area. And as I said before, this particular site, to me, is more commercial than residential with the number of cars that go through there every day. Projected to be 23,000 by 2035. It's 10,000 now. And the people in the area, whether it be the school bus yard or the Forsyth Tech or the library, have nowhere that they can go within that area for any services. So I beg your approval of this, because the commercial needs are a lot greater than the residential need at this particular location. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I think we have a couple of people that signed.
Well, you jumped ahead of Mr. Thompson signed up here.
Well, I did? Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Trollinger?
Yes.
About your second page of your handout,
Uh-huh.
down at the bottom, that map, which shows a driveway that's lined up with the library driveway. From looking at what was presented to us, it seems to me that that driveway would be right where that S is on the staff's map. In other words,
On the bottom of it?
yeah, I'm just trying to place it because it looks like what you've shown us here is a bigger piece of property than what you're asking for to be rezoned.
No, I'm not. We have 1.4 acres. You want to
No, I mean
clarify
on your
that, Gary?
handout.
Oh, this is from the city.
Yeah, what I'm saying though is we're looking at a slice of what you've shown us in A.
Uh-huh.
Is what you're proposing to rezone.
Correct.
And the
driveway
that
from
you're
Forsyth Tech is
showing,
what you're saying?
yeah, that does show nice access into this site, would probably have to be right next to that house. Is that not true?
No, that's not true. It could be further down towards Culver Road. It doesn't have to be there.
Right. It wouldn't be the same as what's on the map. That's
Correct.
what I'm
Yeah,
trying to
right,
say.
right.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Okay, Kirby Thompson has signed up.
About a minute 45.
Okay.
Good
I'm
afternoon.
sorry. At the end of that, you see the petitions from the people all these people live in the community, in the neighborhood.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirby H. Thompson. I live at 3504 La Casa Boulevard. I have been familiar with the area since I was about 8. My grandparents lived where the Pete Mount Circle is now. Then they lived, when they moved to Fairground, where it is now, my grandparents bought land on Airport Road. And I used to spend my weekends out there. There were 2 stores on Airport Road. The Wilkins had one at Airport and Culver Road, which is no longer open. And my aunt who lived at 4220 Culver Road, at White and Culver Road, there was a store on the corner. And now you have about 200 or 300 buses parked up there. When they want to go get coffee or a sandwich, there's nowhere for them to go. There was no Norwood Estate. Norwood Estate was a drag race where people used to race on Sunday. The city dump was at the end of Airport Road, and I'm going back to around 1950. We had 2 stores on Culver Road. We have no stores now. The food line on Martin Luther King is considering closing. People have to leave the community. A lot of those people that you all are referring to around Lansing Drive have to catch the bus to go to Food Line on Martin Luther King to get their grocery. They can't go to the store and get a soda, a loaf of bread, milk. Their kids go to school there. That if teachers do not have lunch and want to go out and get lunch, they have to leave the neighborhood. It is unfortunate that this city planning committee does not really know the history of that community. That community has grown about 700 or 800 times what it was in 1950 when my grandparents moved from where the current fairground is to Airport Road. And at that time, there were very few blacks in the neighborhood. There was no Monticello Park, no Castle Heights, no Bourne Park. Culver Road was basically almost a dirt street. And for us not to have those services now, and I still own property on Airport Road, La Casa Boulevard, and my aunt lived on Culver Road. I have an aunt on Butterfield Drive. They have to leave the neighborhood just to get a loaf of bread. It is unfortunate that a city planning board or department in this city is not aware of the real problems that people have. There's no industry. Part of that area was once designated to become industrialized. Most of the people who work at Piedmont, the airport, do not live in the area. You have to go up the Akron Drive, walk a town, or University Boulevard to really get into services. I cannot believe that they would deprive us of having a place to go to get a sandwich, milk, bread, eggs, basic things, and most people don't know nothing about the Culver High area. When Lakeside, when they first built Culver, old Culver was up there, White and Culver Road. Now it's a bus depot. They have hundreds of buses up there. So you're telling your city employees they cannot go get a cup of coffee or a sandwich during their routes. Something needs to be done, and I hope you all consider allowing someone to put something there to benefit us. This is not Sawato or Johannesburg. This is Winston-Salem. And we're getting service just like people in Johannesburg or Sawato. We need more than that, and I expect more. And I would expect this mayor and the city council people to try to bring more industry and jobs to East Winston. That is one thing that this city has not been considerate of. So I ask you, allow us to be able to go out and get a sandwich. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have exceeded the time for the proponents. But we will now go to the opposition. No one has signed up. Is anyone here who's opposed to this recommendation or is opposed? Then I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Move approval.
Mr. Chairman, could I mention something first? There, Major Sanders mentioned a number of things about a previous sketch plan and some discussion about some of the uses that were included in the request that there isn't an intention to do. But I just want to point out that the zoning request in front of you as submitted does not include a site plan. So even though we may have something on record about a sketch plan, there's no legal tie to that because that was not submitted as part of the rezoning request as a special use district rezoning with a site plan. And if there is a desire to not include some uses, I think he mentioned car wash, there's no intention to do that. It's still included in the list of uses unless the applicant deletes them from it. So just want to point out that although there were some details discussed, none of those details are legally attached to this rezoning request right now.
You just done my thunder. I'm going to give you this job here because I was going to ask if the board, if there were any uses that the board felt uncomfortable with. We'll see if Mr. Trollinger would agree or what's the feelings of the board.
Yes, we would agree.
Well,
any uses that's listed on there that's not favorable with the board, we would be willing to delete them.
Well, we'll see if there are any. There might not be any.
I think the uses that I would consider deleting would be things that the neighborhood says they don't want, such as car washes or things of that nature that are not
Mm-hmm.
going to beautify. So if I go, let me find the list.
It's on that first page. That page.
So deletion of car wash.
Matter of fact, Chris, if I can interrupt.
Yes.
Major Sanders said that there were only 2 uses that you were interested in. Is that correct?
I'm not sure we want to limit them that way.
I don't
That's what he
think we're
said.
limited then.
What uses do you, based on what you had sketched out, if you will, what uses do you need?
Retail, primarily. Retail, which is what's needed in that
Okay,
area.
all right. Is that the only use that you need from this list?
I don't have a copy of this with me, but
I think it's maybe hard to answer if you don't know what
Right.
uses,
What
how they're
retail?
defined in the
It sounds like all
rules.
they need is retail.
Might be
Yeah, I'd proceed along the lines of Mr. Lee goes. Just let him just,
Well,
and you,
you have
did
a
Lee.
retail store, you have small shopping center, special event center, offices, food or drugstore, church or religious institutions. But basically what we were looking at was finding. Okay. It's primarily retail. We did not submit a site plan because we really did not know. We're looking at like a 12,000 square foot center, small center for that site.
Okay.
And it's like the chicken and egg. We really have to get it rezoned before we can talk to any potential developers who might be interested.
Right.
I'm just struck by the fact that one of our earlier cases today involved a part of the city that is one of the most vibrant right now, or the most robustly growing, and there was resistance to somebody who wanted to come in and invest money there. Here we've got a part of the city that is crying out for some investment, and I think we just, as a board, need to be sensitive to that.
I agree.
So how do you?
So, like as I was saying, the only one that I would, feel comfortable taking out based upon what I've heard would be the car wash. I think that's the one thing on the list that sticks out as just doesn't fit.
Okay.
And listening to their statements, I think they would concur.
Any of the other board members have any uses that you have a problem with?
Yeah, convenience store, does that allow a gas station?
It does. They're asking for food and drug store, and so really, if they ask for a convenience store, that does allow for gas sales. So if they were to remove convenience store, they've still got food and drug store. So the distinguishing factor is convenience store allows for gasoline sales, and that's another pretty intense use that I don't know if they really
allows but is not required, but
allows gas sales.
but you can accomplish essentially the same thing with the used food or drugstore.
Mr. Trollinger, would you come back up to the microphone here? And we go through, are you okay with eliminating car wash?
Yes.
Okay. The convenience store, are you okay with removing that? As I explained, you still have food and
Still
drugs.
have retail stores, still have food and drug store,
the
shopping
convenience
center,
store and the
small.
gas. We don't have any plans or space for a gas station,
Okay.
even though you need one on that area. If you come out there on Thursday and Friday and you go down on New Walkertown Road, there's one BP there,
Okay.
and they will run over you.
Okay. But if we take out convenience store, that eliminates the gas.
Yeah.
Right.
That's fine.
All right.
I'm good with those two.
Anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I also had, because I made a little list here, lawn and garden supply, if that's going to involve outdoor storage of
It
materials.
does, yes.
But I'd leave that.
I mean, we can delete that. As I said, primarily our focus is on providing some services to the community.
Right.
I think it's important too. I've ridden by the area with the staff, and my mother lived in the area before she passed away, and I'm very familiar with that area. And you have proponents here saying this is what they need. I think it would be short-sighted of us to narrow this list so much, and we don't do this across the board with other areas. So if the neighborhood wants a nice place to have some outdoor things, if they're not opposed, I think we're fine. But limiting car wash, convenience store, I don't want to just piecemeal this to so much that it looks like we're picking on another area.
Yeah, my concern really has been the lack of a site plan. And the configuration of this lot being, to me, it looks like it could involve some traffic issues and some safety concerns, and not knowing where the access is on this property, especially given the how close that house on Lansing is to the property line and the driveway to the library, it really, I feel a little uncomfortable not knowing what's going to go there and how the access is going to be configured. So
it almost goes back to the last case where, Mr. Stemmer was saying that they already have, 400 or 500 kids at a school. Another 40 building apartment is not going to hurt. If you go through here during the week and you look at Forsyth Tech, you go through on the weekends, you have the churches getting out. You have Greater Cleveland Avenue up the street that has 1,500 members. And then you have Carver Road Church that has 700-800 members. It's already condensed. I mean, it's already hard. I don't see this adding to that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think you can we'd all like to know everything that's going to happen for every case that we're going to do, but we can't do that, and that's not required in the rules for us to do that. So I'm comfortable without a site plan. I think the staff presented the case in an appropriate way to point these issues up with the rules, and I appreciate them giving us that starting point for our discussions for that. But to say we're only going to approve things if we know every detail, I think we can't do that, and we would require people to put huge investments in that they may not be ready. I mean, it's not our position to say you must do this or not. We have to go with what the rules say.
In keeping with that, the list that I gave you, the first page, was a list of all the development in the past 20 years that I've been involved in that area. And everything that we built is occupied. We haven't had any crime problems on anything that we've built. And there's just a need there. I told Alan Jones about 6 months ago that East Winston is like an iceberg that's floated away from the polar ice cap. We're just floating around over there with nothing. $1.5 billion has been spent downtown and not zero there. So, I mean, we need to be a part of the city. Okay.
And related to that, I participated in the most recent area plan for the Northeast area, and that was a huge concern in one of the meetings that I participated in, that there's nothing going on. We need something to happen here. We need services like you all stressed this evening. So I'm in favor of making this work.
We have several neighbors who have signed up to support it. No one has spoken against it, even with the full list of uses recommended here. So I don't want to get beaten up on them too bad, taking out uses. We've removed a couple here. The board members got any other uses that you feel are inappropriate?
Mm-hmm.
So are you going to make your...
Yeah, I'll amend my motion. I've made a motion to approve, and I would strike the car wash as a permitted use. And what was there another?
Neighborhood convenience store.
We're talking about convenience store.
Second.
Okay. Second.
I have a question.
Yes.
Not, as I say, it's like a chicken and egg. We really don't know. We just got to get to the point where we can get some people interested in doing something with it. But a convenience store, now would you consider a Family Dollar store, a convenience store?
Food or drug?
Family Dollar is retail.
Food or drugstore or retail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. There was some concern expressed about built-in materials. I think Gary has said something about the fact that the Forsyth Tech and all that, there's been some nice investment in the community. Is there any kind of concerns about any kind of construction go out there?
Well, we've already been in contact with Mrs. Burke, and she supports it's her area. So we are coordinating with her to make sure that whatever we put there will be acceptable in the neighborhood.
Now, you got a tougher person to go forward than us, don't you? You still
Well,
got
Vivian
Vivian
and I go back to 1985, so.
Okay. All right, we have a motion for approval as submitted, eliminating the uses of car wash and convenience store.
Second.
And second by Mr. Lake. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you, sir.
All right, next item on your agenda is zoning docket W3331. Petitioner is Stephen Craver, trustee for the Trust of Zula V. Craver. And the site is .48 acre located on the southwest corner of Clemensville Road and Conoke Drive. The request is a special use rezoning from RS9 to GB General Business Special Use for the sole use of motor vehicle repair and maintenance. This is Legacy Growth Management Plan. It's located within the Growth Management Area 2, urban neighborhoods, the pink area. And this is a zoning map showing the subject property there. Shown in yellow, it is developed with a commercial building that was constructed in 1947, a garage, and it is zoned single-family residential, as is all the surrounding property. Zoned RS9, it's located at the corner of Conoke, which is a collector street, and Clemensville Road, which is a major thoroughfare. This shows the development pattern, aerial photograph showing the subject property. There are some commercially zoned properties further to the east. You can see closer to Main Street there, some highway business zoning. And this is the draft South Suburban Area Plan update showing the subject property there. It is a special land use condition area there at the intersection of Conoke and Clemensville Road. The recommendation of the current plan, I believe it's 2011 South Suburban Area Plan, does recommend commercial or office zoning, limited commercial or office zoning for the subject property, and no rezoning of the vacant lot, which is right beside it there. That is included in the request. The distinction between that and the new plan is the new plan does not, again, recommend rezoning that vacant residential lot beside the subject property or within the subject property, but it does recommend rezoning the property to the lowest intense district that would accommodate the previous use, which was motor vehicle repair and maintenance, and with actual gas sales, so that was considered a convenience store. So that's why they are requesting general business district. That's the lowest intense district that does allow for this use. So the request from that standpoint is consistent with the draft update plan. These images are taken on site. Again, the structure was built in 1947. It's about 1,377 square feet. It was 4, 5, 6 years ago used as a Texaco. This is there on looking across Clemensville Road. This is the rest of the subject property there. Now looking west from the site into the adjacent residential area. Looking across Clemensville Road. Recently been widened to a 3-lane section with sidewalks. And this is looking east across Conoke Drive. Looking south on Conoke Drive, the subject property is to the right. Oops. And this is the back of the subject property. This driveway connection would be closed and a sidewalk would be constructed along the Conoke Drive frontage. Going back to this image, just a couple of things. You see some lighting, some exterior lighting poles. The petitioner has agreed to a couple of conditions that we feel like would help make this more compatible with the residential surroundings. One of those is a lighting condition that only a half-foot candle of light spill over at the property line. They've agreed to that. They've agreed to a monument signage condition where a maximum freestanding sign height of 6 square feet, or 6 feet in height, excuse me. They've also agreed to retain this tree in the center of that. That was volunteered on their site plan, a mature tree. And they've agreed to a condition that would limit the storage, outside storage of motor vehicles. We've slightly revised that condition. I'll show that to you at the end of the staff report that just further nails down that really only the vehicles that would be on the site would be for the staff there, vehicles that are waiting to be repaired or that have already been repaired that are either operable or inoperable would not be able to be parked on the site except for inside the structure. So really the only area that staff still has a remaining concern for is the lot to the right here, this portion of the property, 50-foot wide lot that was never part of the commercial zoning. About where this PVC piping here, that's about where the property line was. You can see there was some commercial parking here, but nothing beyond that. So they have brought that lot into the request, and we're okay with that. They are showing their 20-foot buffer yard on that property. They're also showing a 6-foot wooden fence. They've volunteered that along this property line and along the back property line. That's an additional site plan element that they have shown. But their site plan shows their parking, new parking, to be extended about 10 feet beyond the property line here into this lot. So that's really staff's only concern. Legally, they can bring it back about 26 feet and line up the parking with the edge of this building, head-in parking here, and still meet code requirements. But we at least want to see it brought off of nothing beyond onto the residential lot. So this is a site plan showing the structure there, existing commercial structure in yellow, or excuse me, in red. You can see the amount of parking area. It's considerably larger than the actual building. The blue line is the divider between what has been historically been used for motor vehicle repair and the single-family lot to the left. Here's the existing tree they would retain. The request would include a significant amount of new vegetation. They're showing a 20-foot type 3 buffer yard along these two property lines. That's 2 trees within every 100 feet and 18 evergreens within every 100 feet. And so those are not small shrubs. Those are 6 foot tall in installation evergreen plantings. So that's a significant amount of new vegetation that will be along these two residential property lines. Also, they would have to install a 5-foot street yard that I've shown here along the frontage. But the main concern that we have is just the extension of this parking beyond this point here. So this yellow line shows where they could pull the parking back to where it's about 10 feet, pull that back in, that still have plenty of room, and that it could actually move it back another 26 feet from this point to this point and still have about a 17.5-foot spacing there for cars to back up and maneuver and still allow accessing into their 2 bays. So that is staff's only concern with this request. The site, again, has historically been used for the same use which is being proposed. The existing building would be retained and not expanded. Request includes conditions regarding lighting, signage, and the storage of motor vehicles. And the request is generally consistent with the recommendations of the existing and the draft update area plans, with the exception of extension of that parking that I mentioned. And so here's a slightly revised condition just to further tighten up that motor vehicle storage area. The underlined words are the new words. There shall be no exterior storage of inoperative motor vehicles or motor vehicles that are under repair. So staff's recommendation is for approval if the proposed parking is removed from the vacant lot adjacent to the single-family home to the west. And the site plan does meet UDO requirements, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Gary, you pointed out the plantings. The fence is also there as well. You didn't mention that in the site plan.
Yes, yes, they're showing a 6-foot wooden fence from about this point here down around over to the over to this
so the
area.
fence is along the property line.
Fence is along the property line, right.
What's that dotted line behind the plantings there?
This dotted line?
Yeah.
That's actually the edge of the buffer yard. This buffer yard, these plantings are not really shown accurately. They need to be moved inside of this area here.
Okay.
But that dotted line is the 20-foot type 3 buffer yard area.
Okay, so the plantings will be in that.
Right, and that would be caught at permitting.
Okay. With those plantings and the fence, I mean, we're getting the public. Why are you so hung up on moving that parking back?
Well, the area plan doesn't recommend including that lot. They are including that lot, and we're okay with that, but we don't want to see the parking into that. So there is a significant amount of protection, you're correct, but again, looking at the amount of, and one also thing I did want to mention, because this is in growth management area 2, they will have to unify the parking surface. You saw earlier some mud holes there, basically some gravel, some concrete, kind of a hodgepodge mixture. So they will go back with concrete on the entire parking surface. That will dress that up significantly. But you see the amount of circulation and parking area compared to the building. So we just feel like in order to feel comfortable recommending approval of this commercial zoning, in this area, and consistent with the area plan, we'd like to see it move back at least to this point, preferably to this point.
Okay.
What happens to the buffer yard when you pull that in? Does it stay where it is?
The buffer
or does
yard
it
stays
move
there
also?
because it goes with the zoning. So the zoning would go along that property line. So even if they move the parking way back, they still have to install that buffer yard.
So you're not saying don't include that lot in the zoning, you're just looking at the site plan itself and moving that
That's
little bit
correct.
of parking.
Keep
So
the
it
lot,
still
that's
goes-
fine. Use it as your buffer yard, that's fine.
Okay.
I have a question. So what are the repercussions? I'm trying to think of service garages I've seen. I've always seen cars parked outside. How do we regulate that?
Well, that would be, as most of our violations on a complaint basis, but they cannot have cars that are being worked on stored outside. Maybe during the daytime, but certainly not overnight. That would be violation.
I mean, it essentially would be an enforcement issue, and we would have to take a look at it on a case-by-case basis. Certainly, we can determine inoperative vehicles, but, if someone drops off their vehicle in the morning and they're going to get it serviced, obviously, they're going to have cars parked out there during the day. What we're trying to prohibit is the overnight parking of vehicles that are under repair and that kind of thing with this condition. So if I'm coming to work and I drop my vehicle off and, I'm not exactly sure what type of auto repair they're doing, but let's say they're doing an oil change or doing a brake job, then it would be dropped off in the morning and I'd come back and pick it up in the afternoon. That's fine. What we're trying to prohibit is vehicles that are under state of repair being parked outside and or inoperative vehicles being parked outside overnight. Essentially trying to get rid of the used motor vehicle storage yard and other unsightly parking of slightly dismantled vehicles.
And are there still gas tanks? I know I asked this the last time.
No, they have been removed, and so the soil is being monitored as it's being remediated. That's a long-term process, but the tanks have been removed.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Gary, do you know how long that it's been since this functioned as a gas station?
I don't know exactly. I know it's obviously been beyond 1 year, which is the grandfathered cutoff, a non-conforming cutoff. I have a feeling it's 4 to 5 to 6 years, but I really could not say definitively.
So,
Petitioner may be able to address
It's been at least 3 years. I want to say it was sometime in 2013 or 2014 is my recollection. Through some of our discussions at looking at this site over the last 6 months, we've actually had some discussions with the property owner over the course of time, and in addition to the applicants that are in now. And like I said, I believe that it was either 2013 or 2014. It was certainly beyond the 1 year limit.
but what I'm saying is it's lost its non-conforming status. It's RS9 property.
That's correct.
It's not
Yes,
commercial.
That's correct.
Okay. And when the 2011 area plan was done, I'm assuming that the gas station was there?
Yes.
Okay, so the recommendation in the 2011 plan was based on the gas station existing on that site?
Existing in operation, yes.
Okay, thanks.
We will go ahead and do the public hearing. There might be some more questions later. No one signed up as a proponent. Anyone like to speak in support of this? Okay. Please give us your name and address, sir.
Yes, sir. My name is Kaz Azam, address 2214 Cole Road, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm representing the buyers. I'm the manager. The property, we basically, our biggest thing is we listened, we set up a neighborhood meeting, see if the neighbors had any, issues they want to, bring up, what was the problem, see if we could take care of them. We got somewhere, but some neighbors, they didn't want it, a service station. But from our point of view, if it's been a service station and a gas station since the 1960s, it's same owners have been working there. Just because it lost its grandfather because the owners from Leonard Oil Company found out there was a leak in 3 of the tanks. So they decided to go ahead and start the cleanup process, which is handled by the state and an environmental company. While doing that, you cannot rent the place out. The guy that was renting it moved out. There's no way to continue running the business while the tanks were pulled out. And then you can't, even after they pulled them out, you can't rent a place until you got clarification from state saying, hey, go ahead and you're clear to put asphalt because they kept cleaning up the dirt because the groundwater got contaminated. So they just got the green light. Hey, we still want to monitor for the next, they said the process could be 10 to 20 years, but it's okay to go ahead and put asphalt, concrete back and run it as what you want. We decided the lot beside, you guys can see, I don't know, Gary, if you want to. Oh, okay. No, this one. The parking. Yep. The lot beside it is, from our point, the owner was selling it together. And the parking right now, let me see, is from the edge of the building to 20 feet is already concrete, broken gravel that we planned on. Well, from my understanding, this was a miscommunication between me and the architect that the city regulation wants a distance of 26 feet. That's why we went into the second lot. But we had no intention because we planned on following state, regulations. So we brought that up, but by then the plan was already turned in. So that on our end, that's no problem. We'll pull it back to where, from the edge of the building to 20 feet. We planned on just running whatever's there, fixing the gravel, broken gravel, putting the level class 3 buffer yard and the fence because some neighbors, we don't want them to feel like, hey, they have a bad view or something. So even though the fence wasn't required, we planned on putting the fence and see, if that helps. If you guys have any questions.
No questions on this appear. Okay. Thank you, sir. Maybe later. Anyone else like to speak in support of this? Seeing none, we'll turn into opposition.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Hello, Jennifer Picardo, 2214 Culver, Winston-Salem. This has previously been used as an auto service gas station, and we're just trying to make it a service station. There were some reports that it was saturated with several service gas stations, and there are 3 that are currently less than a 4th mile away, and the rest are gas stations or they're more than 2 miles away. So those would probably be the 4th gas service station. The rezoning to general business special use repair is in accordance to the growth management plan and the 2030 legacy that promotes in Chapter 3 to encourage the balanced growth of business and community, and Chapter 6 to attract new businesses and expand existing businesses, and 11 to locate commercial uses and near neighborhoods to serve as a focal point to reduce automotive trips for the community. And the major concern is aesthetics. So we're not planning on putting any big signs or anything. Any signs will be on the building itself. So we're trying to give it, we'll keep it that neighborhood community look. Let's see, the property will increase the sidewalk as requested by the city, and that will promote walkable space for the pedestrians. And it will also increase safety by including video cameras that will decrease illegal activity that currently goes on in the vacant lot. The neighbors who decided to attend were made aware of all of this, and that they were also made aware that there was the Type 3 buffer yard that will increase aesthetics, and also the 6-foot fence to decrease the noise complaints from the neighbors. And that was not requested, but it was just put on there by us so we could decrease any complaints from the neighbors. So the property, they're going to say it's a hazardous waste. This along. It's a groundwater monitor report. And it is just being kept at a watch, and it's been done. Everything that has to be done by the state has been done and will be continuously monitored by the state in order to decrease contamination. Assam Properties has followed all guidelines, regulations, and requests that have been made by the city. So since this has been a service gas station since 1947, we believe that this property should be legally rezoned to a GB special use in order to serve the growing population in Winston-Salem. There will be no storage of vehicles on there. The only things we do at our service is anything you need done, like that takes little time, brakes, oils, inspections, things of that sort. No vehicles will be maintained on the property. And then the 5 street yard We've also done that, and the 26th, but we definitely pushed that back. So anything else that is going to be requested by the city, we'll definitely take into consideration.
I have a question. The fence that you're willingly putting up, what type of fence is that?
A wooden fence.
Wooden fence, and it's 6 feet high?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I'll pay attention this time. Anybody else want to speak in support of this? All right, now see none. Okay, we'll go to the opposition. Jesse Adams.
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Jesse Adams. I live at 3643 Hastings Avenue, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, zip code 27107. 27127, I'm sorry. All right, first of all, let me say I appreciate your letting me voice my opinion here this evening at this meeting. And as I attempt to do just that, I would like for you to appreciate our concerns about the community and neighborhood we live in. I want you to consider a couple things here before I get into the crux of my concerns about this zoning case. Consider this. Over the past 5 years, many changes have been made in this area on the Clemensville Road. For instance, they widened our Clemensville Road area from Main Street all the way to Old Salisbury Road to 3 lanes. Now, you would think that's a good thing, but it's not. It's not. That 3rd lane is not being used as much for a turning lane as it is a passing lane. I've almost got head-on more than once myself trying to turn into Hastings Avenue. All right, and it's just, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time till somebody gets killed there because of that. And also, that project ruined a lot of people's yards, a lot of people's property. Also, in another zoning case concerning the property at 444 Clemensville Road that we came for you folks about, we made a bad decision to allow the owner to run 3 businesses out of that one building that he's in. And I say that because the number of cars going in and out, and also tractor and trailers unloading on Hastings Avenue, continues to be an ongoing problem. And I say all of that, to remind you about the situation, the kind of business that is being asked to be run here on at the corner of Conoke Drive. Now, I remind you of all this to get to the situation concerning this zoning request. And let me say this, I'm not, you folks obviously know more about the particulars of this than me. I'm just a tax-paying citizen that's lived in this community for about 50 years. But I do want to remind you that this property has been RS9 for many, many years and was designated as non-conforming for many, many years. No business has taken place on this property, I've been told, for approximately 6 years. So does that not mean that it's lost its non-conforming status? And I think that's already been mentioned here now. And the owner, I understand, surely wants to sell his property to settle the estate that he's involved in. But this property has contamination problems from leaking gas tanks that occurred over the years that it was used as a gas station. And I understand that the environmental people are monitoring that. I heard that here tonight. And I understand that the people that are requesting this zoning change has the option to purchase. They haven't bought this property yet. They have an option to purchase this property. And I really understand where they're coming from, too. They're young people, and they're trying to make some quick money by renovating this into the 3rd auto repair thing. They already got 2 others in the city. Now, my concern is that if you allow this to turn into commercial property now, there is no way to know how long these young people are going to stay in business at this location. Then what would happen? There's no telling what it may turn into in the future. Now, I pray that you might have enough wisdom to understand the community concerns about our neighborhood and do this one right by leaving this property at RS9. Because of the contamination, I do not know what's going to become of the property. But in time, I would hope that some form of housing could be built on this area. Until this can be accomplished, if you have to, tear this building down and leave it vacant. There's other vacant property along Clemensville Road within a city block of this property that we're talking about now that was made vacant because of the widening of the road. And until this can be accomplished, just tear it down. Wait till we can build something that is considered RS9 housing. And, the last comment I want to make is that, I understand that the proponents of this, they make everything seem real good and everything, but I'm telling you, my experience about the things that has occurred on the Clemensville Road, they have not turned out the way that it was proposed to do. So the entrepreneur is not always right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Highsmith?
7.5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Highsmith. I live at 3335 Anderson Drive, 27127. I am here today on behalf of the Cottonwood Hills Community Association in opposition to the petitioner's request for rezoning 300 West Clemensville Road of residential to general business special use to permit the opening of a Jiffy Lube type motor vehicle repair and maintenance business that would create a high-intensity and high-traffic spot zoning commercial entity. Such a business will negatively impact the surrounding long-term residential neighborhoods and is directly across from the main entrance of the Cottonwood Hills community. The Cottonwood Hills community contests the planning staff report that states, quote, this non-conforming corner lot should revert back to its previous use as a gas station and that its former non-conforming usage would lessen the potential impacts to the surrounding area. And I say, really? When the staff report also states that this proposed use is, quote, an intense use which is typically not compatible with single-family homes. FYI, there are single-family homes on all of the other three street corners that represent substantial housing, plus single-family homes adjacent to both this corner property's west and south sides. So how can this zoning not be compatible to single-family homes, but at the same time would be compatible because of a previously out-of-date, non-conforming spot zoning gas station business? Non-conforming commercial businesses are not historical. They are bad urban planning. So what kind of urban planning is being promoted at 300 West Clemensville Road? Bad or good? Our neighborhood community wants good urban planning and good aesthetics. Since this property has been vacant for at least the past 6 years, it has officially reverted back to its correct residential zoning. So its history now is residential zoning. When the original area plan was written in 2009, but is now out of date, this corner lot was still an active gas station, and it was assumed that the gas station would continue in business for the next 10 years. However, the West Clemensville Road expansion project permanently changed the look of this corner lot when about one half of its frontage became part of the road expansion projects and its gas tanks were permanently removed. The surrounding neighborhood community also no longer sees or wants another automotive business at this corner. Given the saturation of automotive businesses within 500 feet of this property and within a 1/4 and 1/2 mile radius. The Cottonwood Hills and surrounding neighborhood along West Clemensville Road want to maintain a residential and neighborhood look and feel and are opposed to the pressure to convert all of the existing housing stock to commercial use or to keep any of the non-conforming commercial uses still in place. We neighbors have been voicing this vision since the West Clemensville Road expansion project destroyed the previous character and charm of this road beginning in 2010. The Cottonwood Hills and surrounding area neighbors are so adamant about having no high-intensity commercial development along West Clemensville Road that 212 neighbors have signed either a door-to-door or an online petition opposing this zoning case and have made 46 different comments in opposition to this zoning case that have been sent to the planning board members and staff. Adding to all of this confusion about this zoning case is the lack of clarity in the area plan update draft process about non-conforming and spot zoning that is so prevalent on West Clemensville Road and South Main Street. This zoning case has brought to light how bad the spot zoning is in this area plan update, such that Cottonwood Hills is now requesting an additional area plan update meeting to address the problem of non-conforming and spot zoning in this draft version. In conclusion, the Conneaut Hills community and surrounding area neighborhoods are respectfully asking the Planning Board to protect our community by keeping this zoning residential and by voting not to approve the zoning case. Thank you.
Thank you. How much time we got left?
2 minutes, 59 seconds.
Okay. Jill, I can't make out your last name. You know who you are. Okay. Okay.
My name is Jill Reich. Good evening first. My name is Jill Reich. My husband and I live at 3330 Conneaut Drive. We are both opposed to this. The former gas station we're speaking of was developed 70 years ago, and in those 70 years, the Conneaut Hills community has changed, and the whole neighborhood has changed. We're seeing a transition now where a lot of the founding residents are aging out. As such, we want to bring in new, vital, engaged residents who want to live in our quiet neighborhood that is close and convenient to downtown. I don't think that this type of business is something that is complementary to this vision or what we want in our neighborhood. This is nothing that anyone wants to walk to spend time at, that's going to gather people in one place. As a matter of fact, we have two service stations 1 block away at the intersection of Main Street and Clemensville Road. There are additional ones over Highway 52 and then on further down the Conneaut Brake Service. We're saturated with auto repair places as it is. Let's see, where was I? I'm sorry. I also want to point out that I attended 3 of the 3 working sessions for the South Suburban planning, and it was noted that on further down Clemensville Road, the black sand should revert back to RS9 should it ever move out. And so I'm kind of confused as to why they would suggest that go back to RS9 when this has already gone to RS9, and here you want to turn it back to commercial. That doesn't make sense to me. And I'd also like to point out, since my husband and I moved in 2010, that this station has not functioned as a gas station or anything. So I know it's been at least 6 years, maybe that's been 7 years. The only thing that's been there perhaps is vegetable sales and so forth. So I would ask that you do not approve this, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any time left?
Right at a minute.
A minute. Anyone else like to speak?
Can I ask that everybody here who's in opposition stand?
Sure. All right. Thank you. If there's no one else likes to speak, then I'll declare the public hearing closed.
Well, we would like to.
We've closed the public hearing, ma'am. I'm sorry. If a board member has a question, we'll call on you. Okay.
So I have a question for Gary or whomever else. I was looking at first page in my agenda book. It looks like everything around the site is residential. Is that accurate?
Directly adjacent, yes.
Directly, and within the 500-foot area.
Yes, on the aerial photo that he showed a little later, just off the right edge of that map, that's
Here,
where
can you
some
pull that up?
HB pole comes in.
I couldn't tell from that where the next non-residential is. Looks like everything yellow is residential.
Yeah.
So we've got some institutional on the other side.
Here we go.
There you can see it.
From a
Just
NAC. Or that may be bigger than a NAC.
And I bet 70 years ago when this first came into operation, some of what's residential now was not, I presume?
It's in the county, and the other activity center at South Main Street, West Clemensville Road was just beginning to be developed. This is one of the first gas stations here, but it's lost its what it initially was starting out to be in the county.
Thank you.
I had a question. Are you through?
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand the rationale of the recommendation because it has reverted back to residential. And we do have a reversion clause which says if you don't occupy that non-conforming use for 1 year, it reverts. That's not true?
It's not a reversion. I mean, keep in mind, I mean, the zoning is already RS9.
Okay.
and
I
you-
misspoke in terms of the words I used, but what I'm trying to say is that the use, the allowance of that use expires if you abandon that use for a year.
Correct, which is why they're trying to get the property rezoned.
Yeah, and I thought that the public purpose behind that rule was that sometimes things are improperly zoned. They are not compatible with their surroundings. Therefore, we have a way of at least accommodating the user of that property temporarily and not inconveniencing them. But over time, we expect that properties will be more allowed to become more compatible with their environment, which is why we have this expiration aspect. So that's why I'm trying to understand why you would want to continue that with rezoning.
Right. In general, yes, that's the way zoning rules are, is that if something is legally nonconforming but it's not zoned for that, the idea of when they lose their legal nonconforming, then unless it gets rezoned, they have to, any changes have to be in conformance with that existing zoning. In this case, we had a recommendation in the area plan to zone that to commercial. First of all, recognizing that at that time of the original plan, there was a service station there. And I think even without that, you've got a difficult situation when you've got a service station, and particularly one that's dealing with remediation there. How attractive is that for residential development when you're dealing with a site that is going to have significant constraints on development for residential purposes for upwards of 20 years or so. So there is a reason why in some cases we do recommend in area plans that an area that might be legal nonconforming be rezoned. But we don't do that all the time. But there are selected cases where we thought that was a good thing to do. I don't know if Kirk Erickson has got any other information on the rationale in the area plan for this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. As Paul mentioned, this is a very deliberate process when we go through each area plan update and look at what we call these SLUCAs or special land use condition areas. Sometimes these are non-conforming situations. Sometimes these are actually properly zoned situations. But all the time we look at these isolated commercial or industrial locations and think, what is the best thing for the community going forward? As Paul said, with this site in particular, we evaluated it. We saw that not only was it recommended in the last plan, but we did recognize that since then the operations have ceased there. But you have some significant investment in a commercial type structure. You have a remediation process that's going to be going on for at least 10 years in the future. We felt that it would probably be too burdensome, for lack of a better word, to expect someone to have to remediate this property over multiple years, tear down the commercial structure that was there, and then try and establish a residential use on this site. Also, just to point out something in regard to what Ms. Reich said about the Black Sand Company and why we treated that differently, that's an example of how we do this review on a site-by-site basis. The Black Sand Company, which is probably half a mile to the west of this site, has a much more residential type structure. It looks like it was actually a house that they just used as the operations center for their business, and their business is just basically selling sand and gravel and things of that nature. So there isn't any contamination in the ground there. It's much easier to just clean up that site and put the house to right inside. So that's kind of a short explanation for the analysis that goes into this and why that recommendation is different for those two parcels.
Chris just pointed out to me we have a couple other examples. You recall Campus Gas on Polo Road. area plan recommended that for rezoning if the right type of plan came along. And then we also have the old Staley's on Renolda. So those are kind of similar situations there.
I think there are some really unique features of this case, from the historical use of it, the facility that's there, and like Paul was saying, to try and make it a residential only site. I don't know how you would do that unless you just took the structure down. I imagine the structure is interior design for the auto repair. So that would be a big investment with that. And it's the cleanups go on all over the place. You may be surprised at where those types of cleanups go on for doing that with it. But to be able to continue to use the property in a way that it had been historically, to me, seems like a logical thing to do. Would they have started the neighborhood and put that there? I don't know, but I'm assuming it was in the county, so it became residentially zoned when it came into the city, or what's the history?
There was no zoning in the county back 70 years ago. The county didn't even institute zoning until the 1960s, so it was developed without zoning restrictions there, and then it eventually got annexed and zoned when it was annexed to RS9 with the surrounding area.
I'd also hate to create a disincentive to clean up a property, and it's going to take generally, well, depends on the size of the property and the amount of cleanup, but you're really going to be wrestling with a 1-year provision to discover, decide on a plan of action, and then start the remediation process, or remediate enough to be able to start the business again. So, a year is nothing, especially during an economic downturn. I think it can create a disincentive to report the leak. They may have been caught, but if they weren't and they were just trying to do the right thing, they jeopardized their grandfathering period by starting the cleanup, starting the remediation.
So if I understand properly, they won't be able to do the business that they proposed until the remediation is finished?
No, that's not my understanding. My understanding is they can, as long as the monitoring is done properly and the levels are as good or better than they are right now. The different things that they measure, as long as they're doing what the plan calls for and the levels continue to decline, they should be able to operate as whatever they're trying to operate as.
Well, the thing with that is the remediation. I'm sure the wells and recovery systems, or whatever methods they're using, are set up for the facility as it is now, with the building where it is, with the parking where it is. So to try and change that really may not work. They may have to totally redesign the site remediation if you change the buildings and where things are at on the site as it is.
That was kind of my question. Let's assume this was zoned to RS9. With the current cleanup that's going on, could you even get a building permit to build a house there if you wanted to? If I bought the property and wanted it to go back to RS9 or go to RS9?
Keep in mind, we don't regulate remediation. That's handled through the state and their inspectors and those kind of things. So the simple answer is yes, we could issue the permit. Now whether or not they could satisfy their requirements with the state under the current plan that they have, or whether they have to change their plan, that would be up to the state.
There's also some market forces at work there.
Correct.
Well, it's different for residential versus commercial sites, and you really have to know the details of the plan.
We've dealt with other brownfield sites that residential use could not, would, from a regulation standpoint from the state, would not be allowed on that site. But so I don't know whether that applies in this case.
That was the case with the old Haynes plant on Stratford Road. We had an area plan that recommended multifamily residential, and we pushed the developer to, and they brought in their brownfield agreement that said you can't do residential here because of the type of cleanup that was happening.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. On this one, you guys are 100% right. That's why we tried explaining to the neighbors, from our understanding, the environmental company and by state regulation, they do not want RS9. It's not that our biggest thing is, it's not like we're buying a piece of land, RS9, and turning into, a commercial. this has been for so long RS9. It was never anything else. It has never had a change of use. It's always been auto service station, gas sales and service station. For as long, same owner, Steve Craver, and same history. Has been rented out to different people, but never had a change of use. But for that, from our understanding, for that sheet you guys have, the environmental company and their lawyers, because we're the new buyers, they told us it will never be RS9 because from state side regulation.
Okay, thanks,
So,
sir.
so I have a question. So what happens if we agree that it should be RS9, it would stay as it is? What happens to the site? I mean, does it just become a vacant lot and just sit there forever?
Well, you've got a building, you've got a non-residential building on there. Very unlikely that would be adaptively reused for residential purposes. Now, there's some other uses in RS9, like churches, that could potentially develop there, but I don't know the likelihood of that. I mean,
So it just go into a state of disrepair.
Or eventually, if it got in bad enough shape, then it could be required to be demolished. Okay.
Isn't there a problem that there could be more contamination by having a auto repair place there because they're going to have the same kind of oils and?
Well, you've got monitoring, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want it to recontaminate.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Everything
We're-
that is used is properly disposed of, so.
Okay, folks, public hearing is closed. I'm trying to get, all right. some
I
action
just
on the
wanted to say something about, we're talking about two options, keeping it RS9 and then the possibility of could it ever be residential versus an automobile repair and maintenance. Now, I don't think those are the only two options that are possible for this piece of property. I would guess that the neighborhood, I don't know this, but I would guess that they would be more happy with something that was commercial, but just not this intense. My big concern is the intensity of automobile repair and maintenance so close to all of this residential development and the impacts.
You think that, I would consider that too. If you look at the limitations that are put on it, in this case, seem to address a lot of those concerns with it.
Definitely the non-storage of
Right.
automobiles, I think, is
critical,
important.
Yeah.
However, I don't think it does not meet all of my concerns about the impacts because you've got noise and you've got appearance issues beyond just the storage of cars, and then you also have potential fumes and all that kind of stuff. So I do see this as very intense for residential.
Board member care to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion for denial.
Is there a second to that? Motion, no one seconds. Anyone care to make a motion for approval?
I'll move approval.
Is there a second to that?
No second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Ms. Smith.
If we can clarify, and we may need to get the petitioner back up, that recommendation for approval, if we could get concurrence that includes the revised condition language dealing with the storage of the inoperative and vehicles under repair.
Can you read that?
And that it includes the change to the site plan to pull the parking back consistent with the recommendation.
Yeah, because that is my recommendation, is to require those modifications.
So we just need the petitioner to confirm.
Agree to that.
Yes, sir, we agree.
You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Ms. Smith. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-1. Ms. Dunnigan opposed. Thank you. All right. Yeah, we need to. Okay. What's up next? The
B8.
Yeah, let's see.
You guys good?
We're good.
All right. Next item's UDO 279, and this is a request by planning staff to revise UDO to require neighborhood meetings and neighborhood outreach for certain zoning cases. And we've briefed the board on this back in October, and we briefed the board on this at your work session last month, so I'm not going to go too far into the details on this. This is, again, in response to some concerns with our current system of formally recommending that neighborhood outreach take place. We've had some cases where no neighborhood outreach has taken place. We've had some where folks have had their meeting a day or two before the planning board, which has caused problems. And really the issue is it causes uncertainty for neighbors as they try to participate in the process. So we are proposing UDO 279, which would require a neighborhood meeting or neighborhood outreach to be done whenever you're doing a rezoning within 500 feet of residentially zoned property. It doesn't necessarily require for a meeting. It allows other forms of outreach such as door-to-door, flyers, mailings, things of that nature, as we've seen those to be effective. It does require a written summary to be submitted to planning staff at least 8 days prior to the planning board meeting. And again, the requirement for that is so that we can get it in the agenda books that get mailed out to you. And the penalty for that is if you don't get your summary in time, there's an automatic continuance to the next meeting. So that allows us to better advise citizens who want to get involved in the process. That was really quick, but staff does recommend approval of this text amendment.
Okay. How does this compare to, is this a public hearing?
It's going to be if you let
Okay,
me.
all right, sorry. Yeah, it is. This is a public hearing, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Does anyone like to speak in support of this? Anyone like to speak in opposition?
Yes,
Public hearing.
I do have a question. If they're,
Let me close the public hearing and ask
sorry.
that question. Now declare the public hearing closed. Now ask your question, Ms.
okay,
Smith.
thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate you. If they, we've had cases before where even with best intentions, meetings could not be scheduled and things could not be done. So if they submit something saying, here's what we tried to do, but for things beyond their control could not get done, does that still automatically continue it?
Unfortunately, yeah, and we've kind of had when we did this, we sent it out to the three big design firms that we deal with a lot here, and they raised that concern as it does require a little bit more front end planning. So I think we need to see something that we can stand up here with a straight face and tell you that yeah, there's been some neighborhood outreach or a neighborhood meeting that's taken place.
I mean, I'd like to see staff have the authority to accept one in less than 8 days if you thought you still had time to process it. But you're saying you wouldn't even do that if you don't get it 8 days prior.
Well, we want to get the information in your book so that you have it, and we also want to have the time to let people know that it's going to be continued there. So, you know,
that's fine. I
it's
mean,
the-
yeah.
I don't know how far you go down the slope there before it, you know.
I mean, if we move it up less than 8, then it won't be in the books when it gets to you. I mean, and that's a call for the board on that end.
Right.
Okay. Move approval.
Second. Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Younger. Any discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question, Aaron. There was a email from the Neighborhood Alliance that made a couple of suggestions, and I just wanted to get your take on those. One is that there would be, the petitioner would just add a list of the names of the people they mailed the notification to, or and then the second was that the city council member be included, just be notified along with the neighbors.
Let me start with the second first. We currently, and we have for the past several years, when we meet with petitioners and they come in to bring their rezonings in, we say you need to meet with the neighbors and you need to invite the council member if you're going to have a neighborhood meeting. You need to reach out to them. We've done that, and we will continue to do that. That won't change. I think staff has concerns about codifying that in ordinance language, because then that puts us in a position of how do we verify it? Do we have to get up with a council member and say, hey, did they call you? Did they do this? That, and also this is a city-county ordinance. We've got to take this to the commissioner, so we don't want to create a city version and then a county version. So yes, that's a valid concern, and we will continue to do that as part of our practice when we meet with applicants. So we will do that. We would have concerns about putting it in the ordinance language.
And then kind of another question that's related to that is on an earlier case, there was some tenants who were concerned about not being notified. Do you routinely kind of suggest that in these kinds of cases?
That was, to be frank with you, that was a case for us where it was an eye-opener that we need to incorporate that in what we advise applicants to do when they come in, is say it may not be enough to meet with the owner of the property. You may need to work with that owner to go out and reach out to the tenants of those properties. So that was a learning point for staff, and that's something that we're going to continue to incorporate in as we advise folks going forward. The tough part on that is there's no way to require it because we can't track it. We don't know who lives in that building. It's not like property owners, which we have a very easy way of extracting that data from the tax office. We can get that. With rental information, we have no idea who lives in those buildings, so that's why it's hard to kind of nail that one down. But we will continue to advise the applicants to meet with the folks in those buildings.
Hey, was the intent if someone does the something that's not a meeting, the outreach, like the mailing letters going door to door, is the expectation they would do that within that 500-foot notification, or how is that going to be evaluated?
We wouldn't nail that down. Again, we send the letters to everybody within 500 feet. We would leave it up to the applicant. I don't want to get so specific in this ordinance that we mandate they absolutely have to go to every single person within 500 feet, because I think about an example, that storage building rezoning at the corner of Hope Church Road and Stratford Road, kind of in a sparsely populated area. Those guys went door to door in the general area, probably got the folks nearby, and that worked fine. I would hate to mandate that they go to everybody within 500 feet that may not be affected by that.
So all we're saying is describe for us
Right.
what you did qualitatively, and then we'll provide that information to you. And then should you find out at the public hearing that there's a problem, then you can discuss that with the applicant as an issue that you think they need to do more outreach or something.
Well, and with your second point in that email that I think you have at your places there, should you want to go with some information, I think the point was, that we should require that the sort of a roster of everybody who has reached out to be included. I would recommend, I provided some language here in yellow, that if you want to go that route, that's an option for you. That she'll describe the scope of outreach along with the issues discussed. Again, the problem with getting very specific in these things is that it kind of creates some unintended consequences. So I think we can, again, have some language to point to when we talk to these folks to say, this is what the planning board's looking for. Who'd you work with? What were the issues?
If the applicant, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that I like your language because it's very broad, but it also gives the applicant something to hone in on is what they need to do. So I think that's very good.
If the applicant had the location, date, time of their meeting schedule before you send your letter to the 500, would you include it in your letter as a service to the applicant? And that way the folks were notified by you that...
So currently that letter that we send out as a city, we give all the information for the applicant. We give, of course, our information, but then we say you can reach out to so-and-so, here's their email, and here's their phone number.
You already knew when the meeting was going to be.
What have you instead included? There may be a neighborhood meeting about this. Contact this person.
We can add some language to that letter to do that.
I don't think we want to be specific because, again, if for unforeseen reasons their meeting has to change and we've told them in this letter and they've had to reconfigure or reconvene, I mean, we're going to be sending people down
I wouldn't want us to suffer some liability because we didn't communicate everything exactly the way the petitioner did. But
I think we can do what you're talking about, Jason, is we can add some more language in there that says, hey, watch out, there may be some outreach coming your way. If you got information, contact this person. We can do that.
Where does the 8 days prior to the date of the meeting, where does that fall in the other deadlines for submitting information? I was trying to kind of calculate. It's the same?
It's essentially going to line up with the day you have to get your revised site plans back in. So it's going to line up. Again, we're trying to get that nailed down, and we're trying to get the neighborhood meeting component nailed down so that it's in your books when we send it to you.
So if you get your revised site plan in at that time, you would not have had time to go over have a meeting about the revised site plan.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily have to have another meeting about a revised site plan. They just need to do their neighborhood outreach at the same time that they are working with us in terms of our review of the site plan and saying, you've got to make, we either recommend this or you've got to do it in order to comply with the UDO. And so they're getting us the revised site plan that addresses those specific comments. At the same time, they may be making revisions related to their neighborhood input too, but we're mainly concerned with them getting us any revisions they are planning so that you have that current information.
Okay, we need to move this along. We have a motion for approval, I believe, do we?
Is that including the revised language or no? Just a question.
We include this revision here. Yeah, who made the motion?
I did, I think.
You did.
Okay.
If it's Mr. Lamb made the motion and Mr. Younger seconded it.
Okay. Including the revised language, right?
That revised language.
Nothing else that we've talked about.
Right.
Right, yes.
Fine with that.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Mr. Norby, we have 3 members that need to leave here in 5 minutes. And we've got time maybe to do the next text amendment. The area plan, are we under any constraints to get that forward? You sat here all day, I know.
It is advertised, but you're under no deadline to do it. So if you want to just continue that for your next public hearing, that would be a possibility.
Hey, folks are here for the area plan. You folks here on the area plan? Okay.
I think we could continue that for a month.
Okay. Well, we still got the text amendment on the
Yep.
Buffer yards.
And Walter can probably put that on the speed dial.
We'll go through it efficiently. UDO 280, Plan and Development Services, we're requesting to amend regulations for buffer yards, which you know are to provide visual and functional separation between land uses to reduce nuisances and safeguard property and protect the public. Legacy 2030 recommended revising our buffer yard standards to promote better integration of uses where appropriate and to improve the user friendliness of the ordinance. Analysis of the proposed changes start with the elimination of the Type 4 buffer yard. Due to its similarity to Type 3, we currently have 4 types of buffer yards, so we're bringing it down to 3. We also looking to standardize the buffer widths to 10, 20, 40, and 100, except for Type 3 due to concerns of crowding plants. We also are looking to eliminate internal buffers on lots that have split zoning, but maintain the buffers along the adjoining properties, and to treat manufactured housing on a single lot as single-family residential.
And Walter, that covers the basics there. All the rest of it is kind of adding the detail there's to it. So if you want to stop at this point.
We had the briefing, so I think we.
Right.
Okay. Then this is a public hearing, though, and I do, Ms. Magnus, would like to speak. Does anyone like to speak in support of this? I see none, so in opposition, Julie?
Julie Magnus, 630 Fenimore Street, Ardmore, 27103. And speed dial doesn't help me understand this any better, which is part of my issue, is that I find that the charts and explanation are just not clear to the stakeholder to try to figure it out. And I would request that this really needs to be something the stakeholder can understand a little bit better. I know about buffer yards, and I found it difficult to look at. I also would like to state that I don't think there's been any stakeholder input from a residential standpoint on this. It's certainly nothing I have heard about or seen. And, it has a huge impact on residential properties. What is that lessened Type 2 buffer yard how is that going to affect my Ardmore home? I live on 2/10 of an acre. I live on a very small piece of property. Buffer is very important when you're transitioning from my little 2/10 of an acre to a different use. And I would like to point out that tax values become a real issue here. I live on Fenimore Street, and on my side of the street, my little 2/10 of an acre is tax valued at $91,000. Directly across the street from me, just as nice a houses, just as nice a properties, those tax lots are $65,000 because they back up to a parking lot with inadequate buffer. Even the two houses on my street that have a storm drain that goes through the middle between them puts their backyards underwater every time we have a big rain, those tax values are still $86,000 for their little 2/10. Oh, and by the way, the ones across the street are 0.21, so they're bigger pieces of property, and they're tax valued over $26,000 less than mine. So I really think that number one, stakeholder, number two, clarity, and number three, we really need to consider that type 2 and what the significant impacts are on residential properties. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Does anyone declare the public hearing closed? Any of you care to address any of our comments? Or?
Well, unfortunately, the rest of Walter's presentation was going to explain why we believe this is an improvement in the buffer requirements. Even though there are less classifications, there's an improvement in the quality and, in some cases, the quantity of plantings. So we wanted to be able to kind of explain that. Unfortunately, we don't have the time today. So maybe the best thing to do would be to continue this for a month.
Yes.
And for folks who would like to have some more conversation about this, we'll be glad to meet with them.
And as far as the stakeholders, what kind of outreach did we do? I mean, there was a concern that residential.
Just to answer that question, we didn't do any external stakeholder development with this text amendment just due to the fact that staff felt this was a relatively minor amendment in the fact that we actually, as Paul alluded to, added planting requirements to these buffer yards. So in one instance, we did go down from a 15-foot minimum width to a 10-foot minimum width, but we did actually increase the planting materials by an average of 50% for those type 2 that the Neighborhood Alliance had concerns with. As Paul mentioned, we'd be glad to meet with anyone in the interim between now and the next public hearing if the board wishes us to.
Okay. Is there a motion to continue this? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because I read this ordinance in preparation for this meeting, and I wrote down questions that I had, and I numbered how many questions, and I had 16 questions. So I do not understand this, I have to say. Not from the briefing that we got at our work session, and, I'm sure that Walter could have shed some light on it here. I just feel like I would like to know more, and I'm sure the public would like to know more. Is there any way that we could we could work at this at work session next,
Bring your 16 questions to work session.
But I would also like to have a way that the public can get their questions answered as well.
Well, we're glad to meet with anybody who would want to get together on this. I would imagine stakeholders would be twofold: developers and development professionals who are designing these buffers, as well as citizens who are concerned about them. And then we'll be glad to talk with you at work session. And it might be helpful if we can get those questions in advance so we make sure we address them. So.
Okay. Can I get a motion to continue this to next month? Motion, Mr. Grubb, second, Mr. Lamb, all in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. And Paul, you said we can continue the area plan?
Yes. I probably need a motion to do that.
Move that we continue the area plan.
Motion, Mr. Lamb, second, Mr. Grubb, all in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay. You guys don't have to vote on staff reports. If you need to go, go. Okay, staff report.
And I'm just going to do one thing here. I'm going to cut my list short. I want to introduce our new staff person who took Colin Franklin's place. You remember he retired in January. And he is Brian Wilson. And he has a bachelor's degree in urban community and regional planning from Appalachian State. And he was actually an intern for us about 5 years ago. And I guess the job situation for planners was not really great during that time, so he found his way working into hotel management. So he was actually the assistant general manager of a hotel in Asheville until the right opportunity came along, and he found us and reintroduced himself to us, and he was selected, just started this week. So we're glad to have Brian on board.
You're not sure what being new Colin Franklin means, but you'll find out. Okay. You do. Okay. All right.
That's it for
That's
staff
it for staff report. Okay. Anything for the good of the order? Ms. Smith,
All right,
you?
we have our motion to adjourn.
Second, Ms. Lee. We're adjourned.
We're down to a few of us.
Yeah,
We were